Hey guys, in this video, we're going to be talking about Warren Buffett's top 5 stocks that he holds in his public stock portfolio. Now, if you like this type of content, please subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up on this video. It really helps the YouTube algorithm. And would also love to hear if you have any comments or thoughts on any of these stocks in the comments. Now, getting into stock number one. Stock number one is the American Express Company, also known from lots of consumers as Amex. So obviously, primary business here is a card provider to make payments with. Um, they are currently trading at $180 a share, and that gives them about $133 billion market cap. Looking past 5 years, which I want to do on all of these companies, given Warren's investment philosophy is long term in nature, we're seeing an over 80% return on capital appreciation, also getting about a percent a year on the dividend. So when I divide that all out by 5, you're talking about high teens growth in terms of capital return on this investment if Warren was to cash it out after 5 years. So, very strong results. Amex has done great over the last number of years, especially despite all the volatility in the market and everything else. Now, what's interesting on Amex, you'll see here, while flat bottom line, so maybe interest rates or something to do with that. Top line growth continues to be really, really strong. So in Q4 was 17%, almost 20% FX adjusted, 25% on the year, and ultimately they're making about $10 earnings per share trailing. So even if they don't really grow next year, which they have been growing over time, they're trading at about an 18 times trailing PE. This is much cheaper than Visa, MasterCard, probably because of a few reasons. Number one, Visa, MasterCard have a broader moat being tied into the banking system, and getting banks kick them off customers probably equates to a lower customer acquisition cost, whereas Amex kind of owns their entire system, doesn't have that competitive advantage of that partner to feed them clients. And then the second thing is Amex has a revenue stream and a profit center for charging consumers to use their cards, annual fees. And then those annual fees um, help them invest in better services, superior offerings for their cardholders. But I feel like that's an element of their business that's probably more discretionary, whereas many Visa, MasterCards, no customer really has to pay to have access to them, even though that means they get less points or less perks. I feel like in a period of volatility or economic turnaround or headwinds, that revenue stream may come under more pressure, and it looks like investors may be pricing the value of those earnings down a bit as a result of that. So overall, given the performance the company's had and their trailing PE, I think Amex is actually in a good position from a valuation standpoint. Can definitely see why he owns this company. Going into stock number 2 out of Warren Buffett's top 5 stock holdings, it is Coca-Cola. So Coca-Cola is a company, if you've followed Warren Buffett for a long time, he probably talks about this company more than any other one, maybe with the exception of Geico, which he owns completely. But just a phenomenal business, really strong brand power, lots of daily usage across the globe, great exposure to different segments within beverages. So this is a business that he loves, and I think he's even joked that his body is 1/3 Coca-Cola because a third of the calories he's had in his life has been from a Coca-Cola product. Looking at the company, they're trading at about $250 billion valuation. I believe their forward PE is around 23 times, pay out a dividend. Past 5 years, they've grown about 6%, give or take, annually on the stock price and paid you about a 3% dividend. So almost about a 10% compounded return over the last 5 years. Now, Warren's owned this stock for decades, so he's up significantly more than that. I think he owns about 8 or 9% of the company. So over $20 billion in Berkshire is just his Coca-Cola holding. If we go into the company a bit more, even though this is a huge company, they're really trying to expand their portfolio for further growth. They obviously have some potential headwinds as consumers become more healthy, maybe don't want sugary drinks as much. But as you look at their business, they really play in a lot of different segments of beverages. They have water. They just acquired Costa Coffee. They have energy drinks. They have performance drinks like Body Armor and stuff like that. So hopefully they're getting ahead of this curve of potential increased consumer health, to mitigate how much that'll impact their business. And they're really focused on just the beverage market as a whole, not necessarily sugary beverages. That just happens to be where lots of the market is today. But you can kind of see where the market's looking at growing in energy drinks, in hot beverages, emerging types of drinks and stuff like that. So they're really making investments, whether acquisitions or organically, to make sure they're very well positioned for the next wave of growth in the industry. And you can kind of just see by adding in um, more energy drinks, coffee through the Costa acquisition, how much they've expanded their total addressable market, just over the last 5 years on this business. And then this is a bit of, investor relations work to show that they haven't hit full scale, full capacity in terms of the reach of the business, but they're just showing with all the other um, growth globally, whether that's population growth or whatever it may be, there's lots of opportunities for Coca-Cola to continue to drive penetration, grow top line revenue, and have that flow through into bottom line value creation for investors. So overall, a much more stable business, one that Warren Buffett will probably die holding, because he loves it so much. And I think given, you know, Berkshire being in a position where they can only invest in very large companies essentially because of the size of their book, and the history they've had with this company, not to mention the unrealized gain they need if they were to sell it. I think it makes sense just to be holding this. I think it's a good investment if you have a very long-term horizon. You're getting paid a quarterly dividend. You're not paying a crazy PE, albeit definitely not a deal. So I definitely see why he owns this stock in his portfolio. The next stock he owns is Chevron. So this one's a bit more interesting and probably the least Warren Buffett-y stock in his top 5 holdings. And he's actually talked on the record before about, if he wanted to own oil specifically, he'd go and buy futures. So he thinks it's some misalignment in the value of Chevron, in the market. And you're really seeing trailing PE of 9. So that means 11% returns, give or take, on the profit that they're currently making. They're paying out a bit of a dividend. I believe they're buying back share. Huge company, lots of moats and competitive advantages. So I feel like this, out of everything that he's doing, is probably the most likely to be a trade or something he moves out of once he feels like the company's realized its full value. So definitely interesting to see this still a big part of his portfolio, but definitely not a conventional Warren Buffett stock, one that I don't think will be here in 5 years. Going into stock number 4, it would be Bank of America. Bank of America, at the end of the day, is a great portion or a great proxy for the American economy. Tons of consumers across America use the bank. All kinds of investment in financial services for the American market. And as Warren Buffett has reiterated over time, he is super bullish on America as a country and capitalism long term. And I feel like this is an investment in that bullishness and that thesis. So trading at 10, 11 times, pretty standard for any bank, pays a dividend, buys back shares, so on and so forth. So this is a company I can see Warren Buffett continuing to own for a very long time as he's bullish on America. It's a great valuation. It's paying a dividend. It's returning value to shareholders in other ways as well. So not surprised to see this at all. Interesting to see. Obviously, it ran up a lot in 21 and then has run back down. But over the last 5 years, Bank of America is essentially flat. So that's really interesting. I think there's been some multiple contraction that's fed into that a bit. So could be an interesting opportunity to evaluate this stock moving forward from here. And then the final stock in Warren Buffett's top 5 holdings, and this one is by far the largest, it is Apple. And this is an interesting stock because historically, Warren Buffett stayed away from technology companies, but a handful of years ago, he kind of came out and said, Apple's not really a technology company. It's just a very good consumer products company, and you're selling products to consumers that use them every day, the same way Coca-Cola sells a Coke or a water. So he kind of pivoted his stance on Apple, and he's done so well with it. I think it's a huge part of his stock portfolio now, a huge part of the Berkshire Hathaway company that you get exposure to if you buy his overall company now. In terms of the valuation, I've talked about this stock before, but 25 to 26 times, a lot of China exposure, a lot of discretionary aspects to their business, albeit also some staple element with the phone side, and a lot of reliance on the iPhone, though. So personally, I think it's trading at too high of a premium to invest in at this point. But I do think this is a great business, probably the best business in the world, best operated business in the world, in my opinion. And I think when you hold a business of that caliber over a very long period of time, you'll probably do well no matter what the value today is, generally speaking. So I think given his investment style, it makes sense, and he'll probably continue to do well and get good long-term shareholder returns from this. But just for me right now, I feel like it's better options in the market than Apple at a 26 times earnings. So those are Warren Buffett's top 5 stock holdings. Would love to hear your thoughts on if you own any of these, if you like any of these stocks, don't like any of these stocks, have any thoughts on them in the comments. If you haven't yet, would love if you subscribe to the video. Give this video a thumbs up if you appreciate it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.